I am resident of Colorwood for YouTube. Joel Saints. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to review Escape from Planet of the Apes, starring Roddy McDowall, Kim Hunter. This is a really fun movie. I enjoyed this movie for the most part of it for what it is. But I'll let you guys go. Gordon, what were your thoughts of this movie? Because it's very different from the first two movies, obviously. Um, what did you think, man?
Well, first, let me just say for those who've joined in late, we're actually taking them in internal chronological order. So we're starting with the third movie in the series because it's technically, as Patrick says, the first movie in the chronology. But then again, Patrick says a lot of things. So take that what you may. I think it's kind of a necessary sequel, but it's a very interesting twist because I'm one of those, I'm older than both of you. I was one of that first wave of people who this franchise really had an effect on. I love the first film. I said last time it's one of my favorite films. Beneath, it's been a long time since I saw it, but I remember it. I think my attitude was that it sucked on toast, but I'm willing to revisit it. But this is a welcome return because it flips the premise and brings the apes into our present society. And it does a lot of what the first film did in terms of commenting on, different kinds of social attitudes. But I think two things that really struck me watching it this time around. The first is that there's a lot more about the implications of time travel than I remember seeing in the past. About, do we have the right to prevent something that's going to happen in our future because people from the future came, I don't remember that. But the other is that this is it kind of has to be dark, but is a lot of the implications, especially towards the end, are very dark and grim and gruesome. But when you consider that this was made in the early 70s, like this would have been coming on the heels of, I think it was made in 71 or 72, so it would have been right on the heels of, in theory, the whole 1840, 1841 parallel time storyline of Dark Shadows, where you see that kind of inherent distrust. I mean, there's some very funny moments, but when it gets dark, it gets dark.
Yeah.
Also, too, there are some dark movies that are going to happen in the 70s, like Last House on the Left. Really dark movie. I love the psychology of this movie. The first two movies, you sort of watch it through human eyes because of Charlton Heston's characters, Taylor in the first movie, and then the second human in the second movie. This, you're more going, Brett. In this movie,
but philosophically, does James Franciscus count as a human?
Yes, James Franciscus is fine. He's it's a thankless job, to be the backup Heston. And I think given that, Franciscus does great. He's he is he's kind of the Pennock in this sense that he has to be sort of the next lead after you've had the sort of the Selby Frid 1-2 punch. He's going to do his best. It's a tough comparison. He's not as magnetic an actor as Charlton Heston, but he also is he acquits himself really well, and he has a very specific function to serve, to be as close to Chuck as you can be, while still making Heston a separate and desired thing. It was almost like he couldn't be too interesting because he'd be taking Chuck's thunder.
Yeah. I think in this movie, I love how you're sort of seeing it through Cornelius's eyes, through his wife's eyes. I love Kim Hunter and Roddy McDowall's chemistry. I loved it in the first movie and the second movie, but I really love it in this movie because we know they're a married couple, but we also find out in this movie, Kim Hunter's character is pregnant. And so
Don't look at Heston.
I love Ricardo Montalban's appearance in this movie as the circus. So
Armando,
really, really good. What did you think, Patrick, of this movie?
I think it's a great movie. This maybe was the Planet of the Apes had always sort of been in the background of my childhood, but this was the first one I think I really sat and watched through all the way. Edgar's one of the shortest. It was on TV, and my father and I had a ritual going to the movies every Saturday. But occasionally, the Saturday afternoon movie would be so good that we would just say, "Ah, screw it, we'll stay home." And yeah, that was the case with this, and it was worth it. It's where I really sort of began to understand the twist, ironic ending as a storytelling tool. Was with this, and the ending's really pretty chilling, especially to a kid who's never seen anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And really, Twilight Zone had not been in syndication at that point in Louisville, so that was very new. I loved it, because it does have that approachability and that humanity and that humor, and that goes up to a certain point, and then right when it needs to turn dark and give you something to take seriously, it lets you take it seriously. And as a director, I love suckering the audience into thinking they're seeing one type of show, and then logically, but unexpectedly shifting into another type of show, and they have that emotional buy-in. But now it's in a very it's in a way that I can abuse as the director, and I do, to gain their sympathies and hold it.
Yeah, and when I saw this for the first time, it was on the CBS Sunday Night Movie, when networks would show like a different theatrical movie on Sunday nights because you only had. So imagine like heading into 9:30 and 10, not only with that, the darkening ending, but with the little chip saying "Mama, Mama," and going to bed like.
That's a big deal. The ABC, yeah. I mean, that was a huge moment. I had to go out and play then. It was the middle of the afternoon, and you weren't in the mood to play. You're in the mood to do a lot of thinking, which is good. But my God, you just had to lie in bed and think of the implications.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Cornelius' death and Kim Hunter's character's death really are just shocking, because the police shoot Cornelius because he's shooting the man who shot his wife. It's like you both said. It's a very
Governor Connolly at one point.
Yeah, what? It's a very dark ending. But I also think too, it does a really good job of how things go from, hey, everything's just fine, to you see human beings sort of escalating themselves of, hey, because the one guy who's advising the president says, them being from our future is the only thing that does make any sense. And so they're sort of, okay, we need to find out what happened, and then in order to find out what happened, they have to give sodium pentothal to Kim Hunter's character. And I love what the doctor says. This has the same effect of grape juice plus wine. And I like the fact that you see humans coming unglued, really, at the fear of what might happen.
But you have to understand how profound their showing up is, because they, there's so many levels. It's like potentially it's people from outer space, a different life form, a slightly more advanced form of life that's on our planet, and they're also from the future. I mean, the movie is very restrained, and it could have gone in the direction of like, priests and society and everything else, but it really, like, this is jarring. It's like with the first movie, Taylor's just like, I hate humanity. I just want to get out of here. Because he even wonders, is there anything more nobler than man? And then by the end, when he's like, okay, yeah, there's something worth fighting for. We blew it up. This is a much more subtle, but I think a much more devastating indictment of humanity.
Sure.
Because we're
Yeah.
seeing it happen in real time.
Yeah.
And yet it I think this was just before Roe versus Wade, because when I was watching it this time, it there's a part of it that I hate to say descended to the point of an idiot plot, which is a plot of a movie that would be solved, like that, if the primary characters weren't idiots. And the two main idiot plot points were even accidentally Zero getting fooled into saying anything about we've come from your future and all of that. That should have been one of the first conversations that they had together, is that under no circumstances can we say this. But the other idiot plot, and this is where I get into the Roe versus Wade thing, is that in real life, and I know the movie would be over in a half hour if this happened, but in real life, Hasline would go in with, the whatever the equivalent was of RU-46 into her grape juice bless, and problem solved. Problem solved. Oh, Zero, you lost the baby. Well, let's just check you out, make sure you're okay. And when they're in there, a little tubal ligation, and the future is saved thanks to abortion. And honestly, that if I had been Hasline, that would have been my first thought. I'm sure it's not the first chimp he aborted that week.
Yeah.
But seriously, I mean that, and so what that points to is not some flaw in the characters or something, because Hasline's a ruthless guy.
Yeah.
I mean, don't think he's not. Just watch the end of the movie, how he shoots that chimp baby. I mean, he's let him own a cat for a while.
Yeah, but don't worry, because they're going to be guys in jeeps, and one of them's going to have an Australian slouch helmet, and they're going to have guns, and they're going to shoot him.
That's true. That's true. But seriously, that's what occurred to me, and so that just goes to show in Hollywood and in standard society how totally unacceptable even the mention of abortion was. It's sort of like looking at the Fountainhead, where divorce, I think thanks to the Hays Code, also divorce was so incredibly taboo that Gail Wynand shoots himself. That's considered, suicide is considered the more moral, manageable fate for someone than divorce. Same thing.
Speaking as a dad, I went to every appointment with my wife when she got pregnant with our children. And I'll say this on our second child, my son. Look, and I don't say this to be political or cruel. Doctors only give a shit about one thing: money.
Sure.
And they get paid by the pop, by the kid coming out, especially OBGYNs. So when my wife said, "Oh, because she was talking to me about it," she goes, I think after our son, we should be done. We'll have two kids, one boy, one girl." And again, I have no say in the matter, And when we went to our doctor, she goes, I want to talk about having my two types. "Oh, you're too young." No. They're basically telling her no. This is what it mean. Like, people think
they denied your wife a tubal ligation after two children.
Yeah, and they said, "Oh no, you're too young. You gotta have more kids." But I don't want more kids. And they're like, "Oh, you'll change your mind." They're trying to con her, but they're not getting away with it. And they didn't give it to her. They didn't.
So then you did the right thing and got a vasectomy, right?
Yeah, I did. I said, "Don't worry about it."
Good for you, Jewel. Good for you. Well, that is a vastly responsible thing to do.
Well, here's I told my wife, I said, "Are they serious? This is the hustle. It's not about, I'm not saying this to be political. It's not about Democrat, Republican. It's not about government. You have doctors out there who are getting paid a lot of money to deliver kids, and they want that money, just like people want kids. It's insane, bro. But yeah, I did get a vasectomy because I'm responsible and I told my wife, hey, don't worry about it. But with this movie, I do think that you have the dark conversation of them wanting to kill the kid. Kim Hunter's character has the baby, and they do the old switcheroo. They put their baby in with the zoo, and they say that baby was born in the zoo because there was a chimpanzee born in the zoo because the doctor in this movie did deliver it, which I like. The story, I love the storytelling in this movie. It's really good. It holds up with the first two movies, in my opinion. And it brings a same sort of paranoia that the first two movies did, because in the first two movies they talk about the people in the first movie they do talk about the people who can control things with their mind. In the first movie they talk about it to Taylor and because it's Dr. Cornelius who says about them, he goes, I'll spare you a lobotomy if you tell me you're from them. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna, because Taylor's not gonna lie, which I love that part in that movie.
Are you thinking of the second movie? Because there are no telepathic people in the first Planet of the Apes.
No, but there's a mention of them in the first movie. Dr. Cornelius.
No, there isn't.
Joel, I don't have a script in front of me. That there may be. I don't recall it. I'll be anxious to see that this time around.
Maybe, yeah. I'm going off memory, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But in this movie, I do love the danger element here. It's really well done. It makes you root for Kim Hunter's character. It makes you root for Roddy McDowall's character. It does what the first movie does in reverse in a lot of ways. In every way. Mm-hmm. I highly recommend it. I mean, and I love the scenes we get in this movie. This movie's really, for the most part, it's beautifully shot. I don't love a lot of the indoor scenes we get. But I do love the idea of, hey, we do have to perform an escape here. And I love how Roddy McDowall's character just goes nuts and he flips the train. Scene I love.
How close is Maine from Manhattan? Because I'm wondering if Elliot Stokes could have taken the time staircase to the Planet of the Apes.
Well, it's about 7 hours, 11 minutes by car.
So by horse a little longer, but now quite longer. But we don't know quite what has happened to the topography, thanks to the nuclear strikes and everything else. So, new channels may have opened up or something. I don't know. Or a catapult, a naturally occurring catapult, or geyser might have thrust Taylor there. Wouldn't it be great if Collinwood were nearby? Because I've always wanted to do a Dark Shadows of the Planet of the Apes crossover, and Stokes and Barnabas and Joy are the logical people. Maybe throw in Willie, are the logical team to be confronting this world of apes. But how would Dr. Zaius have dealt with Professor Stokes, or vice versa? I think it would have been a very different relationship than he had with Taylor.
They'd have been partying.
I think it'd be verbal bitch slapping back and forth.
He really would have met his match. Or at the trial. At the trial, Barnabas shows up in his 1840s outfit at the last minute as Taylor's advocate.
Who's that guy that dresses up as Dr. Zaius I see on Facebook? I forget his name.
You're talking about Dana Gould.
Yeah.
Who has a whole show called Hanging with Dr. Z. which is amazing. And Dana Gould, of course, writes the foreword to the Dark Shadows Daybook.
You need to have him dress as Dr. Zaius and do either a Dr. Zaius, Dr. Loomis like square off, or Dr. Zaius.
He's a huge Dark Shadows fan. He'd be the first guy to do that.
Yeah, Professor Stokes. That would be fun to watch.
It'd be amazing.
That would be, or better yet, have him be Dr. Zaius, have Patrick be Professor Stokes. There you go.
I'd be a good Stokes. Gordon would be a good Stokes.
Yeah. You guys, one of you guys could be Professor Stokes. That'd be fun. I'd watch it. I'd be there with bells on.
Well, Gordon and I talked about a Sam Hall, Gordon Russell 2-man show.
Yeah, we would do it the way Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller did Frankenstein. Like some days I would be Sam and Patrick would be Gordon. Other days Patrick would be Sam, I would be Gordon. I think that's money in the bank. We'd be rolling in the Benjamins. And Hango Dr. Z is on YouTube for free, Jewel. So you should go, you should subscribe, and in one of the comments say you need to do this, and you see what happens.
I will. I've been yelled at by a lot of people.
Jewel, I gotta ask you, politely, without bringing up PTSD.
Sure.
What is the rudest or angriest response you've ever gotten, if you've even gotten one for your show?
God, that's been a while.
Well, and let me maybe add a condition. Don't exclude the one time that I told you to quit sexting me in the middle of the night.
Wasn't that just last night? No. Somebody told me that I didn't know what I was. I think the rudest somebody was with me. Somebody said I didn't know what I was talking about, because I was a little critical of somebody who took Halloween movies and they edited them together, and I said, I get it's a skill to edit, but I think it's really lazy to take scenes that are popular, and every Halloween fan knows are popular, and just put them together and say, oh, that's terrific. No, you want to be creative? Get a blank piece of paper in front of you or a blank computer screen and write your own story. And that's what I said. And somebody put, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I put back, well, I'm a fan fiction writer. I've wrote my own Halloween stories. I'd like to think I know something. And they didn't respond.
Nobody. I'll tell you what. I remember when you said, Patrick, watch the way I do Halloween, because nobody writes for Jason Voorhees the way I do.
Yeah.
And at that moment,
was there. I remember that.
Kind of wondered.
Patrick speaks the truth. But Jewel, I will argue with you on one point.
What?
There are some movies that people have done fan edits of that have improved them. Like,
oh yeah,
there's one of the 1975 Doc Savage movie called Untarnished, where they got rid of a lot of the music and they moved some scenes around, and it actually works. The guy who played Eric Foreman on that 70s show actually took all three of the Star Wars prequel movies and did like a 2.5 hour cut that makes sense. And one of the things he did was he cut out a lot of the stuff from Phantom Menace.
Steven Soderbergh has done a number of fan edits. He did a fan edit of he put both of the Psycho films together. What else did he do? I know that he cut down Gates of Heaven. No, what was the
Heaven's Gate?
Cimino thing? Heaven's Gate. Gates of Heaven, a movie about a pet cemetery. Heaven's Gate, and he did what is called the butcher's cut and cut it down to like 2 hours or so. And he did Indiana Jones, and he put it in black and white. Raiders of the Lost Ark, put it in black and white and rescored the movie, I think, with Trent Reznor music. And it's fantastic. It's a really interesting thing. So, Yeah, sure. I mean, you can do these things. I did a cut. The very first thing I ever did. I've done two cuts in my life, and they were both tough. They're both so rough I won't show them to people, but they were interesting to do. One was I did what I called the foundation cut for Dark Shadows, the movie, where I cut out as much crap as I could. It was about 45 minutes, and it was still. And I replaced some of the music cues and things like that. And then I recut Ghostbusters Answer the Call, um, to just make it a more, oddly enough, make it a more serious movie, and to make it so that we could take some of the characters a little more dramatically seriously.
Yeah. What's you guys' favorite scene in this movie?
That's a good question. I think for me, just the joy of the montage of them, having the luxuries of the early 1970s. I love, and then just anything with Colonel Montalban, those, and his interactions is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I love the scene where the two government people are saying, well, people are worried that these apes are going to take over and dominate, and he's like, hey, if it means that, if our eventual future means we are dominated by such a great species, go for it. Especially since now, I mean, a lot of people, given our own tenor, are kind of expressing the I would say it's the flip side. It's the, well, if there is intelligent life, they know to avoid us. Maybe if somebody, maybe if it's our destiny to lose out, we should do that. Now, totally different context, because in a world of climate change and in decreasing personal rights and increasing fascism, yeah, you want to push against that. But I think the idea of change is inevitable, I embrace it, is essentially very positive in that scene.
Yeah. My favorite scene in this movie, because I really enjoy it a lot, is because this movie starts off very funny to a degree, is when they're I love Hunter's line, because I love bananas. Yeah, girl, you go. The guy, the doctor who's with he just loses and he goes, really? He goes, didn't I take be quiet? Don't say nothing. And she did.
That would be Dr. Milo, played by Sal Mingo.
Dr. Milo,
who would die soon after this film.
Who got choked out by the gorilla, the angry gorilla, in the next cage.
So Jewel, you were talking about being choked up by a gorilla before the podcast. Is that some kind of weird, like,
that was edge play?
What?
That was just to it was just to a certain point. Jewel still had a little gesture he could give him when he'd had enough.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't want the gorilla to push him too far.
Okay.
Very dangerous practices, Jewel. And
well, he's also used that phrase to me before we go online when we're waiting for you, Patrick, and it was not always in response to this movie. I think of some weird innuendo.
He said, what were his exact words, Greg Brady?
He said, I think I'll spend a few minutes choking out the gorilla before Patrick gets here.
Oh, God. Oh,
'Twas beauty killed the beast.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I really have to prep for those Tijuana donkeys, okay?
Oh, no. Eighth wonder of the world.
Oh, my God. You guys are crazy. Oh, my God. Is there anything you guys want to add about Escape from Planet of the Apes before we go?
No. It's a great movie.
Yeah,
and our next film is Conquest.
Yes.
Chronologically, Conquest of the Planet, which is a good movie for turtlenecks.
Mm-hmm. And Don Murray.
God bless him, Don Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, it's his second masterpiece behind the Cross and the Switchblade.
It's true.
I give Escape from Planet of the Apes a solid 7.5 out of 10. It's a really fun movie. It's a sad ending, but it's an ending you should expect from a movie that's in its third movie. It's a third in the franchise. I know Gordon hates that word, but that's what Planet of the Apes has become, a franchise.
But, yeah.
Well, this was the first franchise.
Well, yeah, the first one. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Okay, scale of 1 to 10. Gordon, what do you give it?
I give it a 9. And the reason I'm not going full 10 is I think simply because it does that shift towards the end, and it feels like, to me, they have to get there, but it just feels a little bit abrupt. But that's not. I'm not gonna, I think just not gonna point for that, even though it's necessary. A 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I would. I think a 10 is something that you reserve for a movie where the medium itself is a little permanently changed after it. You're not going back in a good way. So given that, I definitely give it a 9. I can't give it a 10. I give Planet of the Apes a 10 easily.
Mm-hmm.
But this is as good as you could get, up to that point. And David Gerald wrote the novelization.
Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound will be the description box. Link to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page will be the description box. Tomorrow night, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, guys.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, have a good night.
Not all.
Bye.
Bye.